Samuel, most blue chip stocks are falling into negative territory. For example, East African Breweries down 2.6% on the day. It seems nothing really seems to be spared from the sell-off that we're seeing in the Kenyan bourse.
Thank you very much, Samantha. Very good overview there, especially just like you've noted, you're seeing that the general trend of the market is essentially downward. The tide as at the moment is still also southward, especially due to some of the macroeconomic indicators that we are seeing that are already filtering into the economic situation that we're already looking at the shilling, the way it's behaving, and some of its impact on some of the manufacturing stocks we're already beginning to reflect in terms of the market.
Let's look at that shilling, because of course a new all-time low. Yesterday, the 29th time it's hit an all-time low for 2011, 104.15. The Central Bank of Kenya once again coming out with a press statement to try and calm the market. Does the central bank, though, have the ammunition to defend the shilling? Because it seems that nothing it's done in the past few months has stemmed the shilling's decline.
Well, thank you very much. Basically, looking at how the central bank has been reacting to the behavior of the foreign exchange swings, especially in the last few months, we've been seeing the central bank trying to come in strongly. But looking at it from the bigger perspective, especially some of the key players in the sector, importers, exporters, as well as financial intermediaries, I guess the central bank has been focusing a lot on the financial intermediaries and trying to see whether it can be able to still control the situation from that point. And I guess right now, because the situation is getting a bit out of hand, and especially looking at the shilling, especially now that we are in uncharted territory, and people already indicating that it might go as low as 106 is a bit of a concern. And I guess central bank is now trying to see whether it can still come in strongly through trying to be able to support some of these things. And I guess this move is a fairly new one, and we are hoping that maybe somehow looking at it in terms of the indicators that it's trying to control, it might be able to bring in some results.
The central bank has been highly critical of banks when it comes to blaming them for speculation on the market, and they say that has fueled the shilling's decline. Is it the bank's fault, though?
Well, looking at it from the bank's point of view, basically the year has not been very favorable for them, looking at how the interest rates have been performing and looking at how the economy has been basically declining. And I guess for them, they are also on a tight spot. And for them to be commercial institutions that are also profit-making, I guess they are in a tight spot in terms of positioning themselves to be able to take advantage of whichever opportunities that could be arising. I guess what we are looking at, especially in terms of the Kenyan market, is that we cannot look at it in isolation in terms of what is happening on the global front. Yeah. And I guess some of those things are what is filtering into our market, and I guess it's also an indicator. But as for banks, I guess it's for them to be able to still try and position themselves to cooperate so that we can be able to still manage the situation so that it doesn't get so much out of hand.
Now the CBK is saying that it's going to be going directly to exporters and importers in the foreign exchange market as opposed to going through the banks. How is this going to impact banks' earnings going forward?
Well, looking at it in terms of how banks are going to perform, definitely that's a key blow in terms of how they're going to be able to make some bit of money, especially in terms of the commissions that arise from doing foreign exchange transactions. And I guess because of that, the banks are definitely going to come out strongly in terms of going against that and trying to indicate to the central bank that it's time for them to try to make sure that they restrict their involvement in terms of the market. But in terms of looking at it from the bigger perspective, especially the fact that the shilling has been losing ground, I guess the banks should be expected to cooperate in terms of supporting the move, and hopefully within a short time we'll see the shilling be able to recover its the losses that it has already made. But I would expect banks to be a bit more cautious as at now, especially in terms of the position that they have already taken in terms of the foreign exchange, and trying to ensure that they are not as exposed.
Yeah, let's move on to some specific stocks in the market. We had Achumi getting some nice attention yesterday, up 3.6% to 8 shillings and 65 cents. Of course, it has fallen off quite dramatically since that suspension on the stock was lifted. But the company's come out saying it's looking to expand in the region, also increase its presence in Kenya. What do you make of these recent announcements?
Thank you very much. We're looking at Uchumi specifically. I guess the fact that it's the only retail chain that is listed in the market is one of the challenges that we face in terms of comparing it together with the other market players in the same industry. But looking at it in terms of how it has performed, especially over the recent past, noting that its closing previous prices were above 10 shillings, almost at 14 shillings, and right now it has dropped all the way to 8. It's creating an opportunity for most investors, and I guess that's why we are seeing people jumping into the stock. But look at it in terms of even the performance that they did recently. It's fairly upward looking, and hopefully the sentiments are going to continue going forward. Looking at it in terms of their plans, especially of expanding into the region, I guess what they're trying to do is to ensure that they support their performance in terms of taking advantage of some of the other regions that are not really affected by what we are seeing in terms of the Kenyan market specifically.
Samuel, President Kibaki has signed a new law that regulates the price of essential commodities. How is this likely to affect retailers like Uchumi, as you say, only listed stock on the NSE in the retail front?
Looking at it, thank you very much. We're looking at it in terms of price controls. Definitely that's going to affect their bottom line in terms of how they're able to still sustain their profitability because of the margins. And I guess looking at it from that point, I guess some of the things that Uchumi is doing right now, like venturing into other economies, might also position them well to be able to still take advantage of the opportunity that could be there in the market. I guess right now it might be hard for them to push some of these costs to the consumers, and the challenge for them would be to position themselves to be able to still take advantage of volume selling and also strategically place their outlets so that they can be able to attract most of the market that is already there within the country.
Now, Housing Finance MD, looking at the construction sector, has come out saying that the construction sector is under considerable pressure with imported inflation impacting the cost of construction materials. Going forward, what would your exposure be like to sectors that are involved or companies that are involved in the construction sector, given this bleak outlook?
We're looking at the knock-on effect of some of the things that you have been seeing, especially the key performance indicators of our market, like inflation, foreign exchange. We're seeing some of the companies, especially financial institutions like housing finance, who are engaged in mortgage lending, are going to be significantly affected. And we are seeing them already coming out strongly in terms of trying to reduce their exposure in terms of the performance. And also some of the indicators that are already indicating that some of the key players in these sectors are already cutting down in terms of their expenditure. It definitely is going to affect the performance of the economy. Also looking at it in terms of the infrastructural development that the government has been involved in, definitely is going to have to cut down significantly, but hopefully we'll still be able to still push forward, especially looking at the situation of the economy, because we still have a lot of room for growth in terms of the housing sector, in terms of the infrastructure, and definitely the situation that we are in should be expected to just run for a minimum period, and hopefully we should be able to get back on track once Samuel, the situation stabilizes.
Which stocks in the construction sector then would you still be holding on to?
Well, looking at it right now, I'll be very careful or cautious, and looking at some of the stocks like maybe South African Portland, as well as Adriva Mining, and also a bit cautious on housing finance, because I guess they should be very, very positioned to still try to make sure that they still perform well, especially in the medium term.